What's going on, my people? This is Blanche Eden. We are going to be recording episode 33 today on Black Trending News. So today is going to be a sensitive subject, and I'm going to be talking about abuse all the way back from slavery and abuse today as far as like domestic violence and, you know, how domestic violence is second nature to us because of slavery. I really believe that there's a deep connection between the abuse of slaves and how we genetically and even not genetically have been so we've been brought up in this for a long time. So even in 2019, even though we weren't actual slaves, it's embedded in us. So let's talk about it. The similarities between getting a quote spanking or a good whooping, you know, the similarities between that action and how a slave was whipped. There's a deep connection. And did Black people learn to discipline their children from their slave masters unconsciously? You know, if our ancestors were abused, why wouldn't we abuse our children? Like, that's what we learned. We learned that from slave masters. So it only makes sense that we punish in that abusive type of way, because we knew, you know, I'm thinking, put myself in a slave's shoes. I know this is wrong. It doesn't feel right, but it's just the way it is. Our parents got a whooping. They might have had that same idea. Like, well, this is how it is. It doesn't feel good, but this is how I'm going to discipline you because this is what I know. And if you noticed, abuse, quote, abuse is a really big thing, even more than it's ever been. Like, there was a time when getting your ass whooped was not such a big deal. Now, if a child goes to school and there's a mark on that child and the child says, my mom or my dad or whoever did this to me, that person that they told is mandated by law to tell somebody in authority. It is a hotline, there's a phone number, your director, whoever. They're mandated to tell somebody. So this is the strictest I've ever seen, you know, an ass whooping go. But again, there was a time when parents could go all out on their kids. There were ass whoopings, and there's corporal punishment. You know, I think that if you strip a child down to no clothing and you beat them with objects that can leave them physically scarred, many would say that's a form of abuse, including myself. And it happens, you know what I mean? So I think the law is more involved now because kids were dying. Like, parents were literally killing their children. So I guess the law got involved, and now, you know, a little mark can mean a big sentence for some parents, or just even if it's a warning. Parents in general, and Black parents specifically, need to find ways to discipline their children besides physically, because it has a consequence. To me, as a parent, you need to be conscious of your physical power over a child. I think that parents need to learn how to come out of this, and I call it slavery. I call it slavery discipline, because to strip a child down to nothing and whoop them with objects is exactly what they did to us when we were slaves. It's exactly what they did. It's not different. So please, if you feel it's different, then leave it in the comment section. But when a child is physically marked up terribly, that is no different than what a slave master did to a slave. Now, you may have your reasons. Oh, they weren't listening, or I want to protect them. I'm fearful for them. I'm scared. But it's no different than what a slave master did to a slave. It really isn't. You call it what it is. Just like abuse is learned from parents, and generations back, it just kind of, there has to be a place where you stop it. Kids nowadays are more outspoken, and they will go to school and tell somebody that they trust, mom or dad or whoever, auntie, grandma, is doing this to me. So, I mean, it really benefits families to look for other ways to address their children's behavior. Classes are out there. Therapy is out there. I know it sounds, it's frowned upon. I feel like in a lot of communities, not just the Black community, I don't need any help raising my child. Like, I got this. But at the same time, when you abuse your children, similar to what a slave master did to their slave, and I'm calling it out there because that's what it is a lot of times. These stories that I've been reading, they're horrific. I want to get into the connection, again, emphasizing the connection between slavery and the modern day abuse that takes place, whether it's abuse between cops and citizens, domestic abuse in relationships, child abuse, parental abuse. Yes, children abuse their parents. As Black people, if we were enslaved and we were, quote, disciplined by our masters to act right, be right, and do as they say, with public display of whippings and lynching and severe, awful, life-threatening abuse, we were also taught not to say anything, not to complain, not to talk back. And this is language that our parents used with us. It's the same type of language. It's just in a different time, but it's very much the same thing. Right? You better not say nothing. What happens in my house stays in my house. Okay? This type of language causes people, children as adults and even as children, to suppress those feelings, those emotions, because the slave master said, don't complain, boy, nigger, whatever other derogative name they would call them. And parents said not those names. Well, sometimes maybe they did, right? Maybe parents address their children like that. I'm sure that there are parents out there that do. But speaking on a maybe not such a severe level, parents may use terms like I mentioned earlier. You better not say anything. This is my house. What happens in my house stays here. This is for your own good. This is to protect you. This is to help you. This type of repetitive, I call manipulation, is what slave masters did to slaves. It's the same thing. I know it's really hard to swallow and it's hard to understand for some people. It just might be because nobody wants to believe or compare their parents to a slave master. But your parent or your domestic partner, or it could be somebody at work that's abusing you. Not the way a parent may abuse you, but it's still a form of abuse, right? Don't say anything. As a child, we listen to our parents. Our parents is the oldest relationship we have with anyone in the world. So, or our providers, whoever is taking care of us. We have this type of obedience to them because if they say don't say anything, we're probably going to listen. We're more than likely going to listen out of fear and because they're our parent. That's it. Just those two reasons, and for whatever other reason, but at least those two reasons. They're our parent and we're afraid. And our parent wouldn't hurt us. It's that backwards manipulation. Our parents wouldn't hurt us, but in actuality, they are hurting us. And a lot of parents do not look at stripping a child down to nothing and whooping them with objects. They don't look at that as abuse, because that's what they entailed. And this is where I come back to slavery. Now, I'm sure that a slave knew this was wrong and this was abuse and it didn't feel right, but it's what we have to deal with. It's what we're dealing with. This is how it is. So I truly believe, as generations went on, this is the mentality. This is how it is. Why are you beating me? Because I said so. Why? Because I said so. This is how it is. That was my mom's favorite thing to say. Because I said so. That's what it is. There really is no reason. I don't think parents even know sometimes. It's because they say it's been taught to them. That's what their parents said. That's what their parents said. And unless you break the cycle in your home, it's going to continue to do that. Round and round and over again. Unless you learn other ways to talk to your children and to raise your children. And there are ways. Beating them is not the only way, because that's what slave masters did to slaves. And that's what partners do to each other in abusive relationships, right? This is the connection that I want to make with domestic violence and relationships and other abusive relationships, but more likely on the domestic violence part of it. So if you're growing up and you're getting abused, this is a normal behavior for you. My mom or my dad or my care provider abused me. When I meet a boy or I meet a girl and they abused me, this is norm for me. I've already been accustomed to this type of behavior. So at that time, again, we know this doesn't feel right, but it is what it is. I love this person. Or just like you love your parent. I love my mom. I love my dad. I wouldn't betray them. They told me not to say anything. I love my boyfriend. I love my girlfriend. I'm not going to. It's that same mentality that our parents are actually teaching us to have and to be continued in an abusive relationship. The reason why people don't leave an abusive relationship is partially because they've been taught as children to be quiet and to not say anything. The reason why parents tell their children to be quiet is because slave masters said, don't complain, don't talk back. This is your life. This is it. Deal with it. And it's just being handed down. Just like when a man beats on a woman, sometimes he has no remorse. A lot of times he has no remorse. He is justified within himself. He thinks this behavior is okay. I saw my dad do it. I saw my mom do it. I saw my family do it. This is what it is. It's all around you. So why would you leave? Because it's all around you. If you were in an abusive relationship with the people you've known for the longest in your life, why would you jump into a non-abusive relationship? Matter of fact, you might unconsciously be attracted to someone like your parents because you only know abuse. It's second nature to you. I know I'm being abused. My mom, dad did it. So why would you say anything? Why would it be wrong? This happens all the time. I'm used to it. This is your mentality as someone in an abusive relationship or at work or wherever the abuse is taking place. Why would I say anything? I was abused by my parents. They told me not to say anything. Unconsciously, I'm not going to say anything because I've been taught not to say anything. So why would I leave? I wouldn't leave my parents until I got of age and maybe something happened in my life, something shifted. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be here anymore and I'm leaving. But that took time. You couldn't leave as a 7-year-old, as an 8-year-old, as a 10-year-old. You couldn't just walk out. Most of the time, no. It's like, I got to deal with this. Just like in a slave mentality. You have to deal with this. You are a slave. You cannot go anywhere. You are here. This is your life. So when you end up in a relationship with a man or woman that's putting their hands on you and treating you wrong, saying the wrong things to you, abusing you, you stay. You stay. Because you have been taught to do that from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, not just in your parents' home. Your parents learned it. Your parents' learned it, taught it to them, taught it to you. And here you go hopping into another thing. You wouldn't even know an abusive relationship and it slapped you in the face because you have been slapped so many times. It's nothing to you. And as a matter of fact, when we experience abuse at home, it could be worse than what we've experienced in a relationship with a man or a woman, right? Let's think about the differences between a relationship with your parent and a relationship with a man and a woman. You're not having sex with your parent. That's the number one thing. Sex is a big deal. People really don't talk about it. Why don't you talk about it? Sex is a really big reason why people stay in abusive relationships. That is a intimate connection where we are on the same level for the most part. We are equal. We are enjoying it. We are happy. This feels good. I'm staying. I didn't do that with my parents. It didn't feel like this when I was at home. This abuse is different, but it's still a form of abuse. That's a connection there in itself. Right? I'm independent. Me and this person are independent. We're on our own. I'm free from my parents. I'm free from my slave master. Now I'm going to abuse the next person closest to me, which is my child. It's the same mentality. The same mentality. Unfortunately, it again breaks my heart to even talk about this. Like, it's just the connection is really there though. Let me know in the comment section if you understand what I'm talking about, or if you think I'm crazy. Tell me anyway. Yes. So abuse goes all the way back. Now, it has to be broken though. You know, we can't expect it to stop until somebody stops it. So if you were abused, what you want to do is stay out of abusive relationships. Any type of abuse. Name calling. Two adults calling each other names is a form of abuse. See, it starts at that. But if your parents called you names, if you called your parents names, this is normal to you. I'm speaking from my own life. If your parents called you names, you will more than likely call other people names. You will be called names back. Their parents called them names. Your parents called you names. Now y'all are calling each other names. Your kids are calling you names. Your kids see you calling each other names. They're calling these people names. It's a small form of abuse. I'm just using name calling as an example, but it can go into other things. Hitting, pinching, punching, running people over with your car. It can go as far as wide as it wants to go, right? If you are a child and you see your mom run your father over with a car, don't you think that has some type of effect on you? So if you get in a relationship and you run somebody over with a car, you may think this is normal. Or if somebody runs you over with a car, you might be like, all right, well, I'm going to take him back because my mom did it or my dad did it. This is normal. My daddy was whooped, so I whoop you. I get whooped. We whoop each other. We all whooping each other's asses. This is norm. But let's break the cycle that the slave master put on us. That's how I feel. I feel like if you abuse your child, you're continuing the cycle. Whether you see it as right or not, you should just stop. Because they're going to get into relationships and accept abuse from other people. If you abuse your child, how could you be upset if they're in an abusive relationship and have the nerve to tell them to leave? Yes, you want them to leave because you don't want anything severe or deadly to happen to them, but you did it to them. So let's acknowledge that part first. You might have did it to them. Maybe their other parent did it. Maybe somebody else in their life did it. But nip it somewhere and make sure they don't carry it into their, because that's how it happens. We get abused, we abuse our children. It's the same thing. But like I said, I believe it's connected with slavery because that was the most severe abuse. And look how the abuse is kind of dwindling down. It's being watered down and kind of kept in more control by the law or just our own consciousness. But it hasn't stopped. It's still happening. Why should the law have to tell you to stop beating on your children like some kind of maniac? Why does the law have to even come into your household and tell you that? You should know not to do that. But you don't because it happened to you. You learned it and it's the norm. So the law has to break the norm for you. Break it yourself. Another reason why abusive relations take place and stay long, especially in domestic between two people. You feel like you can change them. As a child, you are optimistic for the most part. and you believe that your parent may stop hitting you. That's your way of saving grace, saving yourself, keeping your mind intact. My parents, they're going to stop doing this. They're going to stop. She's not going to do this forever. He's not going to do this forever. They're going to stop. If they're sexually abusing you, if they're physically abusing you, verbally abusing you, in your mind, you're saying this could stop. Either I got to go or it's going to stop. And once you realize it's not going to stop, you run away from home, or you leave, or you jump into another abusive relationship because you didn't even know you were in an abusive relationship. I didn't even touch that yet. How you don't even know you're being abused. You don't even know what abuse is. You just think this is norm. This is life. This is a whooping. But it's abuse. Now, you feel like you can change the man or the woman to make them stop abusing you. I can change my mom. She loves me. She'll change Mom, can you stop hitting me? And she doesn't stop. I'm going to keep asking. I'm going to keep hoping and wishing. But it never stops. When you get into a relationship with a man or woman, you may revert back to that same mentality as a child because you were abused as a child and you haven't closed that wound. And you may not ever close it, or you may not have a chance to close it because they kill you. This is real. People are really dying from domestic violence. Women and men. More women than men, but nonetheless, people are dying from domestic violence because they stay and think that this person will change, or they can change them. A lot of kids think that they can control their parents and they can make their parents love them more or stop abusing them. If your parent or spouse or coworker doesn't even understand that they have a problem, like a parent that abuses their child more than likely has, they won't stop. Because they don't even see a problem. They don't even know what abuse is. This is me. This is what I'm doing. This is how I am. There's no label called abuse on it. It's just their life. It's their lifestyle. It's what they do. It's how they communicate by physically hurting. This is how they are. So the fact that you think that you can change them, you're reverting back to your childlike mentality. You're going, I could change my mom, my dad. Thinking if I love my dad more, if I clean my room, if I don't go out, if I do this, they're going to stop abusing me. If I stay with him, if I help him, if I stick by his side or her side, they will change. When they don't. The difference between a spouse that's abusive and a parent that's abusive, a parent is less likely to kill your ass. They do. Parents do it. Unfortunately, this is a fact. But in an abusive relationship with somebody you did not grow up with, you don't have any type of, blood connect. They just might be on that shit where they will kill you. Because that connection is not there like a parental connection. Not to say a parent can't break that parental connection and take their child's life, because they can. But the chances of them doing it is not as likely as a boyfriend or a girlfriend that you aggravate. You get somebody aggravated enough, they will. Or they get aggravated enough because you are not responsible for somebody's level of aggravation. They should have self-regulation. They should be able to regulate their emotions. Most adults should be able to do that, but they can't. So now you are in a victim situation, and they're a victim of themselves. Or they want to be victims when they make other people victims. I mean, it gets all crazy. But bottom line is, you can't change somebody. And the reason why you think you could change them is because you thought maybe you could change your parents. All right, I couldn't change them. Maybe I know I could change him. We have a different relationship. We have sex. We have children together. We have a home together. We have a life together. No. That person needs to get themselves together. And they need to change themselves. And then y'all could maybe have a healthy relationship if you make it. Unfortunately, I have to keep saying that because there's just a lot of stuff in the news about people killing off their partner. Another reason. People don't know how to leave. They're dependents and they're scared. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to go. They don't know that they can go. They don't understand their own power and their own abilities because it's been beaten down so bad. They don't understand. Like a slave. Slaves left. But what about the slaves that didn't leave? They existed. You and I know that. Some slaves were freed and said, I want to stay. I'm nothing without my master. It's the same mentality in an abusive relationship. It's the same mentality in a child-parent relationship. My parents take care of me. They've done everything for me. They're all I know. This man or woman is all I know. Or I don't want to know anything else. Ignorance is blissful. I don't want to go out there and know. I don't want to know. Don't tell me. Because right here is where I want to stay. I'm comfortable. I've built up a toleration for this abuse. And now I'm gonna, if I keep staying here, I will build up my immunity to this abuse, and I can deal with it. I can do it. I'm strong. Strong or abused. There's a difference between being strong and being abused. And women, and in general, and black women more specifically, have this tendency to be told you got to be strong. But not in this way. You got to be strong for yourself, not to stay with somebody who's abusing you. There's different levels of strength, and there's different types of strength. And I think strength can get misconstrued. You got to be strong enough to leave somebody who's abusing you, not strong enough to stay with somebody who's abusing you. You got to be strong enough to be independent, not strong enough to stay dependent on somebody who's abusing you. You got to be strong enough to be scared of dying because this person may snap and take your life. And they don't even understand. They still don't have full comprehension of what they're doing. So here you are, even more lost, trying to change somebody who's lost. You're lost too. Two lost people can't find nobody. You're lost. He's lost. She's lost. You're both lost. You're just lost on different levels, you know? And I hope that people break the abuse cycle, whether it's in their home, with their children, with their spouse, with their co-workers, because abuse happens at work. I won't really get into it, but there's different little tiny little low-key levels of abuse at work that women deal with, that men deal with. Sexual abuse, verbal abuse, things that are acceptable in society that people don't say nothing about because they are, again, abused. So an abuser can spot out somebody who's been abused, especially if they don't speak up, or they may not, retaliate. They're like, oh, I found somebody, a victim. I might be able to abuse this person. Hold on, let me try again. Let me keep abusing and see how far I can take it. Because they were abused. They know how it is, but they don't want to be abused again. So they are the abuser. Because if you're weak, then you can't abuse me. And I found one more person to deal with my bullshit. So if you are in an abusive relationship, whether you're at home, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're at work or anywhere, you should say something for your own self, because you don't have control over someone else's abusive actions. You just don't have control over it. They have to learn how to self-regulate themselves. And you can't help somebody self-regulate. That's why it's called self-regulation. It's within them. And you have to have the common sense enough to back off and let that person grow. Because if they're destined to grow and they're healthy, they're going to be better for you. They're going to be better for you. Have a good day.